So, how's it going? I hold in my hand the last time NVIDIA ever attempted to make a dual GPU solution for the consumer market. $3,000 this thing cost. And it came at a time when AMD launched the R9 295X2 at half the price. So, what's with this Titan Z business? I mean, we've looked at a 690 before, which was two 680s on one. You know, it looked kind of like this, but this guy's a fatty, man. This guy is a wicked fatty. This guy here holds up, well, 2.5 slots, but the I/O shield is a three slots. So, I mean, there's a little bit more cooling going on in this thing. And this is technically like two Titan Black cores on one card, or two 780 Ti's cores, sort of. But the difference being, this has 12 gigs. 12 gigs of GDDR5 on board. And, well, it's 6 gigs per core, but that's still a lot of VRAM in today's age. And I've been doing some testing with this thing, and I got a good idea for some performance on it. And it's actually still hanging up there with the big boys in SLI. Well, some of the big boys. But, I mean, if we take this and we put this 2070 Super in front of it, yeah, she doesn't look so big anymore. So, let's go ahead and, we've got it up on the bench. I want to get her all undressed, figure out what makes this thing tick cooling solution-wise, and then, of course, we're going to fire her on the old test bench and, see what she can do in 2019. But first, I think it needs some new thermal paste, so come with me. We're going to go ahead and get this thing all nakey-bakey, and we'll see what makes her tick. And then, from there, we can test her on the test bench and know that the thermals are as good as one giant fan spinning between two different hot GPU cores can really get. Yeah, so come with me. What's going on? Yeah, we have her all hooked up on the test bench a few days later here. And yes, I've been working very hard getting the best kind of situation and scores and some benchmarks done on the Titan Z. We are overclocked as far as she'll go. She's pushing on both cores over a gigahertz, and temperatures are relatively in check. I only have the fan at 90%, and it's not that bad. I mean, it's nowhere near as loud as some AMD cards from the time, that's for sure. And as we see here in Firestrike, getting some pretty damn respectable scores. So if you see here, it takes a second to get up to its top frequency. It kind of does that whenever you put a workload on it, and it kind of makes me wonder if it's working right. Oh, and then now it is. Okay, we're at 1032 megahertz, running at 94% usage on both cores, up at the 62-degree range with like a pretty hefty overclock on this thing. That's awesome, considering, I mean, I guess the cooler is a little bit better than some of the other solutions at the time. It's fatter, but it's still a blower cooler with one fan blowing in both directions. So it's not doing too bad. And it's getting 80, at this section of, Firestrike, it's pretty good to get between 80 and 90 frames a second. I'm really impressed with what the capabilities of this thing are, but then you have to think, okay, it's 5 years old, but imagine I paid $3,000 for this. Thinking I'm future-proofing myself, and then SLI support has dwindled in 4 or 5 years to basically nothing. because it's, as I'll talk about in just a second, virtually impossible to benchmark SLI with modern titles these days. Virtually impossible, even with the tricks that you used to be able to pull and stuff. And what we'll do is we'll look at some other cards while it's finishing up. Over here I've got some loaded up. So I've got a 980 Ti. This came out, just a year to a year and a half after this card would have been, actually probably wouldn't even have been as much, but it's getting 20,600. That's an overclocked gigabyte version, really nice 980 Ti, and WindForce. That's a pretty good score. We're running on the Ryzen 3700 there. We'll switch over to 1070 Ti, again on the Ryzen 3700, and it's getting a graphics score of 19,000. So a 1070 is below 20,000. And then this is that Vega 56 I just did the other day. I was able to pump her up to 23,000. Pretty good, showing for that Vega 56. And then we come over to, what did she finish off with? Well, 20,570. So that's 980 Ti performance. That's better than 1070 performance. That's a little bit under Vega 56 performance. For a card that costs, well, $3,000, but it's been 5 years since this thing was released, so it's doing pretty good. And I guess it better, but it's an SLI, right? So I'm going to turn this off because it's super loud. I'll just show you my overclock settings there. I'm at 122. If I go any higher than this, I get diminishing results. And then I got 430 on the memory, a little bit on the voltage and power limit, and fans at 90%. We were getting really decent temperatures, considering the cooling solution that's on this. Now we can hear, for sure. So I'd love to just go and show you a whole whack of benchmarks. I mean, it's getting, 980 Ti, 1070 level performance. I mean, we should be able to knock it out of the park on some newer games, right? No. We've already been kind of dealing with this. So number one, I thought I was having trouble with the card, and it turns out my 7820X299 system was it's never working with dual GPU cards very well, or SLI in general. Maybe, anyways, especially dual GPU cards. This was supposed to be dual GPU month, right? And I was having all kinds of trouble. So I cut my losses with that system, and I went out and I found me a really good deal on, pull it out of here and get static all over it, 9900K. So I have a 9900K. I'm just waiting on a motherboard. I'm going to use this to retest the R9 295X2, which I have two of them. I was having a heap of trouble getting those cards to work. This was supposed to be dual GPU month, and it's the perfect card to run head-to-head with the Titan V, or Titan Z, sorry. Titan V, I wish. It's the perfect card to run versus the Titan Z, because they are basically headline competitors. This one was, worth twice as much, but they're both of the time, and one has 4 gigs per GPU. This has 6 gigs, so it would be a really interesting head-to-head. And I think I should actually grab titles of the time with the latest drivers that work with them, and then maybe we could do some Battlefield 4 and some some older games, Far Cry 4, stuff like that, and really judge them head-to-head in what they're good at, because nothing works with SLI anymore. Nothing works with Crossfire. It sucks. I wanted to do a bunch of tests, and I was going to use the NVIDIA Profile Inspector cheat, where you're able to apply different SLI profiles to different games and get them working. And it's like either with this card specifically, or with just SLI and the drivers in general that have come out in the last, I'd say 6 months was the last time I really, actually it was the 690 was the last time I played with NVIDIA Profile Inspector, and it worked a lot better than it did this time. I was at least able to get Apex Legends to relatively work. I was able to get Battlefield 5 to work just fine. I'm going to show you Battlefield 5. I show you some benchmarks of it. Watch the plane section, the second section of that benchmark. And then, I was going to show you some others, some stuff I knew worked, and it's just always had all kinds of crazy artifacts. I was playing Fortnite, which I got working perfectly last time I messed with one of these cards, and it was almost like I was cheating. I could see through walls. Check this footage out. It's not really like I'm cheating, because the performance is so shit that I'm bouncing around all over the place. I would have never been able to take advantage of it, but I can literally see through walls And that was the exact profile. I looked at what settings I used last time to get Fortnite working. When I applied those settings now with this card, it just looked like absolute crazy, didn't look right, and I couldn't get it to work. So it seems as though if you're using SLI, or at least a dual GPU card and NVIDIA Profile Inspector to trick some games into SLI working, it's like not working nearly as well as it used to. I'd love to hear from you guys, and if you have, you know, some of the latest games working with that method, because it certainly wasn't working right for me. So let's actually run through like 7 games that that were known to have SLI work perfectly on. We'll grab some performance data, and when we come back, we'll just do a little summary on this little boy, because it was a pretty fun experience to play with a $3,000 graphics card, even if it's 5 years old at this point, and hell, you know, it's actually been a pretty good performer. So let's check her out. All right, did you watch Battlefield and you saw the plane? It was all weird and janky. Well, I was using the exact same settings I did last time, and I didn't have that kind of issue. Certain things in that game would just move all weird and jiggly with the NVIDIA Profile Inspector cheat. I don't know if it's just something I was doing wrong this time. Maybe it's possible, but I had that kind of experience in nearly everything I was trying to use that method to apply SLI to games that don't officially support it. So it's basically to the point where it's not even fun to play with SLI anymore unless you're gonna use games of the era, from 3, 4, 5 years ago, because nothing supports it anymore. Tomb Raider is like the newest thing that does. Even Far Cry 5 sort of officially supports it, but the GPU usage is always terrible, and it doesn't. It's like not even worth it. You might get 5 more frames a second using SLI, but your 1% lows are terrible. So it kind of sucks. But all in all, it was pretty fun. I got to thank Jason Peruka. He's the one that sent me this card. $3,000 graphics card from 2014, and I mean, it's really fun to play with this kind of stuff. It's really fun to load her up onto. Are you done? Yeah. Load her up onto some Fire Strike and actually get some decent results. Her backplate is hot. Jesus. Took it all apart. See the engineering that went into this thing. It's actually got a pretty decent cooler for the time, considering it's a blower, because they extended it out like another, I'd say, 3/4 inch. It really helps with the cooling. We saw there, it's not even that loud running at 60 degrees, in a case. You could run with at 90% fan speed, and it's not going to be terribly ear bleeding. But as far as anyone who bought a Titan Z, a $3,000 graphics card back in 2014, I feel really bad for you, because even though they still go for like $500 and there's no reason for them. Maybe there's some legacy games that people just love to play on period specific hardware or something like that, even though that's only 5 years ago. I don't know what it is, but this was like 400 USD, 430 USD. So it was definitely around 500 USD by the time it got in my hands, shipped and stuff like that. Thank you, Jason. What is it useful for? Except for Counter-Strike. And you could do just as good on a graphics card that costs like what's a 1070 worth these days, or a 980 Ti? 250 bucks, 300 bucks, if that. 250 bucks. For, you know, a $250 used graphics card can beat this $3,000 beast 5 years later. And it makes me wonder, what about like RTX Titan, or like you know, the Titan V, something like that? Is that going to hold up better because it has a single GPU, or is graphics technology going to really go leaps and bounds in 5 years like it did since this time? I guess we'll have to find out. So I'm at Watch Timmy Joe, Instagram and Twitter. I thank you guys for coming along with this little Titan adventure with me. I certainly had a lot of fun. It's interesting to go back and look at, you know, where the roots come from. And, you know, basically what this thing is great for is Time Spy and, well, not even Time, Firestrike and Counter-Strike and Crisis. That's what this is good at. And it's really pretty. I like it. It looks awesome. With his fat self. So I'm out watching Joe, Instagram and Twitter. It's been a ball playing around with y'all guys today, and I hope you know a little more about $3,000 video cards from 2014, and I'll see you guys in another video.